Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the news behind the news with Ralph Cantava on Mix 94.7 FM. And today's going to be one of those informational discussions or interviews. I have here with me Miss Richelda Emmanuel from the courthouse. She's a court manager. And good afternoon to you, and thank you for coming on the program.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, it is a pleasure to have you. I make it a point on the program to bring in various types of people, but I also especially feel that with different institutions on the island, it would be good to, for the public to understand, what those institutions do, their relation to whether it's a power structure of the island, but also the services they render for the public and so forth. So again, thank you. And I was really glad that you accepted to come on the program. But to continue, my question for you is to start off is if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this wonderful position.
Wow. It's going to be a long story because I have a few years,
Yes, no problem.
No, but I was born in Aruba. My mother was born here on St. Maarten. And somewhere or the other, in life it is that it makes a circle. I consider myself a kingdom trotter, being originally from St. Maarten descendants, but born in Aruba. I lived in Curacao. I lived 15 years in Holland, and then I found it was time to come back on this side of the world because you can't spend more time over there than over in your own place. And St. Maarten has always had a pull for me as a place, and I was glad to be able to start here in '97 as a policy worker by social affairs and labor. And from there, I did many projects within the welfare sector and also project and program bureau. And when we became country, I did kingdom relations for 2 years. And there was an opportunity to become the director of the Court of Guardianship then, because also the Ministry of Justice was busy with restructuring actually what the departments within the Ministry of Justice, especially the care sector within the Ministry of Justice, the Court of Guardianship being one of them. So also the Victim Support Unit, which was a pilot but never continued, but also the Ms. Lally Center, Youth Rehabilitation Center, that was one of my projects, and the Youth Rehabilitation
which is essential
section. And so while working there, of course, as a director of the Court of Guardianship, also I would go to court because you would normally have a person that would do the legal section and in court advise pertaining to anything that has to do with minors. If there are any cases that directly impact the lives of a minor, the Court of Guardianship is present to make sure that in the proceeding, the rights of that child is being secured, especially in divorce cases, that then the question would come about as to, would both parents remain the legal guardian, or where would the child reside, or pertaining to alimony and those kind of things, visitation arrangements, and we would advise on those issues. So there's where I actually was introduced to the courthouse setting, and would also have to delve into the legal frame of child protection and things like that. And I've always, from very, very small, I loved law, legal frame, debating, seen to discuss about rights and those kind of things. So by the Court of Guardianship, actually more and more my love grew for knowing the laws, our laws, family laws, youth laws, but laws in general. We are confronted as Caribbean people also a lot of times with inheritance laws and things like that. So that brought me to delve into that. And also by working by the Court of Guardianship, I was exposed to the University of Leiden, their master class on the rights of the child. And after I did that, I was like, I have this thing desire for so long, this burning desire to study law. On my 50th birthday, I gave myself a present of registering for the law bachelor's course, which is done by the University of Curaçao.
Yeah.
But they offer it here in St. Martin, and I thought this is the time to do that.
And I love that you said that, because it's really never too late to start anything.
Never. I believe in lifelong learning.
Yeah.
If you look at my resume, I've been, even though working from very young age, I've always continued studying, because I believe you're always you can always learn more. You can do so much more. And then the connection with the courthouse is that there was a vacancy at the courthouse at that time, and in the first round, I didn't even see that the vacancy came out for a new court manager for St. Martin, and apparently only persons from the Netherlands applied.
Really?
And one of the policies of the Joint Court of Justice, and I'll explain more about the jointness of the Joint Court of Justice, is that we want to make sure that a lot of local persons be able to stream into the court setting, especially in managerial positions. And so they set it out for a second time, and my attention was brought to the vacancy, and I thought, hey, why not? It's difficult. It's difficult in St. Martin, once you're in a managerial position, to actually be able to make career, say, moves. So when an opening like this comes about, then it's like you have to try it out if you want to do anything and go anywhere. And so I did, and here I am. As of January 1st, 2019, I am the courthouse manager for St. Martin for the Joint Court of Justice. And as I said, it's not the Court of St. Martin, is the Joint Court of Justice for Aruba, Curaçao, St. Martin, and for Bonaire, Saba, and Statia. And from St. Martin, we service Saba and Statia. So we go over once a month. Due to the COVID situation, it was not as frequent as we wanted to. But we did a lot of court cases online, but we do the court cases for Saba and Statia. So our judges and our legal team, we support Saba and Statia.
Yeah, how was the online proceeding process like?
Well,
lots of challenges, or no?
In the beginning, yes, and now it's becoming so.
Norm.
It's norm.
Yeah,
actually,
I saw was one case I sat in. Actually, had to do with the prison that they were able to video call in, and it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, actually, it is so that usually when the judge has to evaluate if a person has to extend their stay in prison or in pretrial detention, they would transport the people to the courthouse, and then the person would see the judge and so on. And usually that took place in an office with the judge, and just in a judge office, and very small setting. And due to the COVID, that was not possible. So we started with then doing via the video conferencing on the other islands also, Aruba and Curaçao also. And that worked very, very well from the police station or by the prison, by Point Blanche, and they connect to the office by the judge. Most of the time, the lawyer is at the courthouse. There was a certain period of time in the COVID that they were even home because we had a lockdown. So you had to facilitate that. And you'll be surprised that when you find yourself in these kind of situations, that you can be so resourceful, and that everybody just works along to be able to make it happen, because in the law it has certain deadlines in time frame that a person must be heard by a judge. And you cannot bypass that, they have that right within 2 days, within 30 days, or, and so you have to make it happen.
I see. And that in itself is a hurdle to overcome. But a question I have as you speak about the joint court, who do you report to? Would that be the Attorney General or the Minister of Justice in your country?
No, okay. The court system is a part of what we call trias politicas, the separation of powers. And in that sense, you would have, everybody knows the parliament, that is the legislative branch, and then they know the government building, the ministers, they are the executive branch, and we are the legal branch in the sense that we do not fall under the Minister of Justice or It's Kingdom Charter. Actually, by Kingdom Charter, the institution of the Joint Court of Justice came about, and all 4 countries of the kingdom are represented in that setting. And in that sense that on a kingdom level, there's a regulation that brought the Joint Court of Justice into being. And we have what you call overseeing board with representatives from Aruba, Curacao, St. Maarten, and from the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And then we have an executive board, and those are, let's say, those are judges, and the judges are stationed at each head office. So we have a chief judge here in St. Maarten. Mm-hmm. Judge Verrijen is our chief judge at this point in time. And then we have a chief judge in Curacao that is now the Judge Maurits de Kort, who would become our new president of the court. And so we have in Aruba and all the, together with the director of bedrijfsvoering that executes all the support for running the courthouse, mm-hmm. the court. Together they form the board, the executive board. And then on that layer we have the branch managers, and the branch managers are actually the ones that has to make sure that everything, the building, the administrative staff, any support staff, anything that the judge needs or the court system needs in order for us to process our work. Yeah. You know, so the judges are appointed by the king officially, so they're not appointed by the governor or one of the ministers. They cannot be fired by any one of those either.
Gotcha.
And they're appointed for life. And what we do as a Joint Court of Justice, we recruit within persons that adhere to the resume to be able to be a judge, and that are judges. We also try as much as possible to get in local judges. And when I say local, according to our policy, local means persons that were born on one of these islands but are affiliated with or been here for more than 10 years or are married to persons from here. There is a thing of 55%, trying that 55% of our judges are local judges. And then we have, because of the small scale, the need to also bring in judges from the Netherlands and the rotation system for, you can imagine, especially if you're a judge in the criminal sector, that you don't want to be on an island too long, or that the small scale of your society is better to rotate. And so we also have judges that come in for 3 or 5 years. We rotate from the Netherlands to the Antilles, but we also rotate within the islands.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that then, because indeed the court is part of that. Definitely has to be independent, of course. Yeah. And as you outlined, Tres Politica, every body has its function in ensuring checks and balances.
Correct.
Which of course
it's about the checks and balances.
Necessary. Yeah, indeed. Okay. So I have a question, actually, as you mentioned about the local judges. What is the process of one becoming a judge? So would it be based on an amount of years you serve as a lawyer? Do you have to specifically get a particular law degree? What is that process like?
Yes. You must have a master's degree in law, and it can be from Aruba, from the Netherlands, from Curacao, which we then adhere to now also here in St. Maarten, because we do the university,
law program. Mm-hmm.
The law program. And what we call the rayo, to become a judge within the this part of the kingdom, the mm-hmm. Caribbean part of the kingdom. After receiving your master's, you can get into apply for the program, which is 5 to 5 years. And in that program, they have the basic, let's say, that you can go through the system within the court house itself, 2 years by the court. You can do 2 years by the 2 years at the prosecutor's office, and then the last period you choose a specialization. So you can specialize if you decide for the prosecutor's section, you go to specialize with the prosecutor's office. If you want to become a judge, you specialize then within the court system here. And when I say here, I mean it can be Aruba, it can be Curaçao. It's not specifically St. Martin, within the Joint Court of Justice. And there is a outline on that program when you be evaluated. And in the last section, you specialize also in Holland. So you actually, especially if you want to work within the setting of this part, the Caribbean part of the kingdom, we try to train the judges as broad as possible. For instance, if you want to become a judge on St. Martin, even though you have a specialization, you work in a specialization, a certain area, family court, for instance, you still have to be able to, once in a while, do a labor law case, or you have to be able to do a public law case because of the smallness of the scale.
Yep.
And the other thing is
that breadth.
Yes, and then if you look at, we have to do any kind of legal proceeding, any kind of court case that somebody would come and submit a case for should be able to be done here. And so,
gotcha.
And if you don't have the judges that are specialized in that area, they're flown in. And so let's say a good example is the tax judges. When they have any proceedings pertaining to tax laws, then we have actually Aruba is more specialized, and they will serve also Curaçao and St. Martin and other islands. So then we will fly them in. And everybody knows the TBO cases and so on.
They are,
they would fly in the judges then from, they're stationed in Curaçao, but they serve all the islands. And so that's how the court works.
So those are particular judges too?
Yes, they are particular judges. There's a specialization. Okay. So again, if you're a judge within the Joint Court of Justice, and any staff member within the Joint Court of Justice, actually we work for all the islands. We can be placed at any island. So whatever service is needed, we can render.
Okay, because I was going to ask, I'm glad you clarified that as well, because I was going to ask you how many judges do we have, but I guess if...
Yeah, we have on St. Martin stationed 5 judges.
Okay. And provision... so I guess provision for more is just made based on the particular need for a specific
Okay, the
case.
division as to how many judges you have and how many staff members and so you have on the islands is based on the average cases that you have per year. And so that's how the division is made. So we have, let's say, again, it's a Joint Court of Justice. Everybody works in the same, unit.
Yeah.
And based on the needs of each island, we're divided among the islands in personnel. And then you have the element of there are certain ongoing themes of cases that would be needed, as I mentioned, from family court or labor laws or criminal court. And so that must continue. So you know that you would have judges specialized in that area stationary. But if you're talking about tax laws or, any specialized cases, especially if you talk about appeal courts, then the judges would fly in from somewhere else, most of the time from Curaçao, but they can also be from Aruba, and then they would serve St. Martin. So when you go to, we have here on St. Martin stationed judges that do cases in first instance, as the first layer of when you come to submit a court case. If you lost the case, sometimes even when you win and you don't find it's enough and you want to take it to a higher court, so you go to appeals, into appeal court, then Court of Appeals, then you would have 3 judges, and then those judges would fly in from, like I said, Curaçao or from one of the other islands, and they would do the case then. If you don't agree with that, you can go in cassation, that's in the Netherlands,
the higher court.
The highest court in the Netherlands, and they serve us as a Caribbean part of the Dutch kingdom, but also the Netherlands.
Okay. I mean, listening to you, it sounds like basically just that part of the justice chain is definitely very busy, I would say.
Yeah, we're kept busy.
Yeah, needless to say, right?
Yeah.
So another important role, you have your judges, but an important role for the court system is court recorders.
Yes.
How many do we have here in St. Maarten?
And
how does one become, like, do you have to also have a specific training to be a court recorder? Can you detail that?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You have to, at this point in time, the requirements are that you studied law. You can start up when you have a bachelor's actually in law. And because we have different levels of court recorders, also the court recorders can be specialized in certain areas, or depending on the court proceedings, the level of knowledge that is required from the court recorder can differ. So you would, let's say, put in the court recorders also based on the kind of court case and also their own level level that is required from them. And as in a lot of things, when a court system started, the requirements were different than what the requirements are now, also because the laws were then different, or maybe sometimes less complicated as to what the development has been over the years. And so more and more you would have that the role of the court recorder is no longer what people used to see before, especially people that look at these movies, Law and Order, and you see the recorder just sitting and typing and nothing else. It has moved from that to the court recorder being actually having a role as a judicial partner in the system, as into preparing the court case, and also can be consulted by the judge. There is the deliberation between the judge and the court recorder pertaining to certain case, and the judge is ultimately, of course, responsible for the decision, the judgment that is made. But there are deliberations also with the court recorder. So the court recorder has an active role. And therefore, it is necessary that the court recorder also has a legal background and knows the laws of the land.
Yeah, makes sense. And I can imagine that for such a position, you have to be very alert too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
You have to be a very good listener. And even as my grandmother used to say, you need to be able to differentiate between sense and nonsense.
Yes.
Besides taking out what the essence is of the law. Yeah.
So speaking of essence, then, a tricky thing is, of course, language.
Yes.
Because I was saying, English is predominantly spoken in St. Maarten, and while Dutch is just also an official language, so is English.
Yes.
But I can imagine that there are challenges sometimes when persons come to court and so forth. But you guys do offer
a translator.
Interpreters as well. And so do you? How is that as far as how many do you have? And the training that they undergo, do they also need to have sort of a legal background to be an interpreter?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that's one of our biggest challenges on the island, to find interpreters that would be able to adequately, interpret for court proceedings. But let me go back first to the part of the language. It is so that we inherited being a part of the Dutch kingdom, and how the history of our went that it's basically Dutch law in first instance that was adapted for our islands, and then it went over to that something that people must also realize. It is that the law, something that I hear so often. Yeah, but these Dutch people impose this law on us and things like that. That to realize that we have a legislative branch, being Parliament, and so all the laws that we have here, or that are being judged within the court system here in St. Maarten, they are our laws, and so our legislators can have those laws changed and can influence what is the law. And it is not that the judges would or the Dutch people put these laws on us, impose these laws on us. Those are laws that we adapted and made our own. That's one. And it is indeed so that the court proceedings are officially done in Dutch, but they can also be done in English, because English is also...
if it's mandatory. Yeah, okay,
it is not. So. It can be done also in the English language. We have judges that sometimes, if they can speak Spanish, they do it in Spanish, and if they can do it in French, they can do the proceedings in French. But to be legally correct with the decisions, they would pronounce the decisions, they would give the decisions in the Dutch language, so that there is no room for misinterpretation as to what the decision was in accordance to all laws, so that you will see that even though the judge would speak English with you during the whole proceeding, once they come to giving the sentence, especially in criminal cases, that they would
you get a verdict in Dutch.
Get the verdict in Dutch and would be translated.
Is there any effort to have it done in both? So English, so you get it in. I guess it. So I guess it's because you're using Dutch technicalities.
Correct.
So that's why you don't get it in English.
It's because you don't want no room for different interpretation in first instance.
So like a person would have to, get their, let's say they get a verdict, they would have to get it translated on their behalf.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But not by the court. They're lawyers there if they want to do it themselves.
Is that something the court is considering?
No, it's not.
Okay. So our next question then that came to mind with particular verdicts is they're not online, right? Are they published?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
At rechtspraak.nl. Okay. So it's our verdicts are also published on the website, general website of the courts. Like I said, the rechtspraak.nl. All the verdicts also of the Netherlands are published.
Okay, so for every case proceeding, you can go online and find.
You can find.
Okay.
I don't think they publish all, but you can find the verdicts there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So while I guess speaking of the public relations side, the broadcasting of cases, is that permitted? If not, why?
Okay. I'm not aware of any, let's say, written policies in details about that element. I can state that some court cases are public and some court cases are not, especially if you're talking about family matters or any cases pertaining to minors. They're not public cases. Mm-hmm. And I would have to let's say management of the court, the board, as into our policies where that is concerned. I see certain things are changing. Like I said, due to this whole COVID situation, it has been more and more effort has been put into going digital or making things available via social media and things like that. But I would have to owe you an answer to that question.
Okay.
Yes.
That's understood. And I guess with that also what comes to mind is one of the reasons I asked it is, there are cases that are of national interest, and not everyone would have the opportunity and the capacity as well is not there to house that many people. Mm-hmm. So I figured, certain cases like we had with the constitutional case that was broadcasted on radio, thankfully, and so forth.
Yes.
So
that's a decision of the Constitutional Court. And there's the other thing, that the Constitutional Court is not the same as the Joint Court of Justice.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay,
so it's another entity, and actually it's quite unique within the kingdom. The other countries are talking about it. Not even the Netherlands has it, or Aruba and Curacao. But we have a Constitutional Court, and it is the decision of that court to do their broadcasting like that, or that it's open for broadcasting.
Okay. Yeah. I have maybe a trivial question, but can the court sue someone? Can the court engage in a lawsuit?
In what sense? You have to specify.
Okay. Let's say that an offense is made to the courthouse as an institution, and you want to file a case against an individual. Is that possible?
Maybe the court as a entity.
Yeah,
you mean?
Yeah.
If the court as an entity can start a proceeding against.
But it's, for example,
an individual.
It could be a lawyer or.
Yeah, there are different possibilities, I think, for that, in the sense that the laws apply to us too, as an organization, and in that sense, it might. It is a possibility to, if we need to. Let's give an example. We too buy water and furniture and things like that. If one of our suppliers breaks the rules, or we want to take our suppliers to court, it is a possibility as an entity. So I guess it's an avenue that's also open to us as an organization.
Okay. It answers my question. I was just curious about it. You know, I was wondering if it's possible or not. But thank you for that. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the News Behind the News with Ralph Quintava on Mix 94.7 FM. And this afternoon, I'm joined with Miss Richelda Emmanuel, the court manager of the courthouse in Phillipsburg. One of the questions that I asked earlier was about the interpreters. I know we kind of went around it. Yes. So indeed I was asking basically how many do we have, and also the role that is played in ensuring that, you know, persons are able to understand what's happening, because, you know, not many people would know Dutch and so forth. Yes.
Okay, so it is that the court doesn't employ. They're not employed by the court, but we hire the services of interpreters, and at this point in time, there's only one fully certified court interpreter, the Dr. Linda Richelda.
Yeah,
and so you would see she would do the more complicated cases. And she's been saying for many, many years that she's going to stop. And we have a challenge as to then, but what are we going to do? Because actually one interpreter is not sufficient already as is. So we have persons that have done different courses in translating. And so we have also a lady that recently started to assist also on St. Maarten, and but she's a school teacher, because it's not a full-time job. So she's a school teacher, and then
so while she has based on need.
Yes, while she also is certified, she's not available all the time, especially not for the morning sessions. So she would assist in the afternoon sessions, and so. Dr. Linda Richelda was training a few persons here in St. Maarten to be able to assist her also with the translating. But it is, for a lot of people, it's not to translate in a court session. It's not, okay, I speak English and I speak Dutch, or I speak English and I speak Dutch and I speak Spanish. So because you have to literally, as the judge or the lawyer or whoever is speaking, you need to be able to translate directly. And then comes the additional part of the legal terms, and that is, I work within the court system, and sometimes it's so difficult for me to find the correct English or Dutch word for certain legal terms. So that's the challenge. And so we've been looking for persons here in St. Maarten. So if you know anybody, tell them to contact us at the court, especially the Spanish and the French. Mainly the French, because Dr. Linda Richelda also does the Spanish translations. Okay. But there is a need, and she has indicated a few times that she's going to stop. So anyone out there,
you're kind of in a hot place to get it.
It's not a full-time job, but it's on a regular basis, and we are obliged by law that if it's about a criminal court proceeding, that we supply a translator.
Gotcha.
Someone to interpreter.
I guess that's where it also, becomes beneficial to the judges and lawyers because island like the other islands, may be kind of black and white, but with St. Maarten you have that diversity. You can't ignore.
Also, sometimes we make use of international organization that would do online, but then if sometimes they don't have the Caribbean English, so they wouldn't understand the Caribbean English to be able to translate correctly. So it's a challenge. It's better to find persons
we have
here.
Connotations. Exactly. Because I could say a certain word, and it might not. For example, if I say, boy, you just bun me.
Yes.
So someone foreign, they would think like, did he?
And it can have far-reaching consequences.
Yes.
Especially in a criminal court proceeding.
Correct.
Because a lot of slang has been used.
Exactly.
And then you put yourself in a position, if the judge interpret that the wrong manner, that it can have far-fetching consequences.
Indeed. So something I'm curious about is your role, but more so, how is a day in the life of a court manager? What are your main tasks and responsibilities?
Okay, managing. Actually, it is. You're quite fortunate as a court manager, to have staff members that are very dedicated within this, especially courthouse here in St. Maarten. We call it the courthouse family, and it's not to say anything about the other islands and how their team work, but we're really a small unit and closely knit, and in that sense, the atmosphere is then different on St. Maarten versus the colleagues on Curaçao and Aruba and other islands. Maybe Bonaire, because it's small too, they have the same atmosphere. But how does it function? Okay, I manage the administration. That's where you come in to also at the reception desk to ask questions, but also to submit a court case. And basically, they would do the registration, tell you how much you have to pay. So I manage that sector, making sure that all the paperwork that comes in to go into the trajectory of reaching to be planned into for a court proceedings. And we have different teams, so also the court recorders are put in sections, for instance, for family court, or that they do criminal court or labor laws. That's shared amongst them. So the court recorder team, so the judicial team, also falls under the responsibility of the court manager. They have to make sure that they prepare the documents that they got from the administration, prepare them for the court proceedings, prepare them for the judge. Sometimes they would write out the documents, the cases, what would be the essence of this case, in which area of the law you have to look for, and so on. So that is one of the jobs of the task of the court recorders that I explained, that is different than before, that you would just type. Now you have also the responsibility of actually preparing the court case for the judge.
Gotcha.
And then it comes to the judge, and the court manager also has to make sure that physically the courtroom is ready, that everything is there in the courtroom that they need. The computers are functioning, sometimes the microphones, and that there is a bailiff present, that there is security. So actually everything that has to do with the functioning of the courthouse falls under the responsibility of the court manager, with the exception of the execution of the judgment. The judge, that's the totally part of the judge. Yeah. And so the chief judge, as we would call it, the chief judge would be also the coordinator amongst the judges to ensure the quality. His responsibility is to ensure the quality of judgment that is taking place on St. Maarten, that we adhere to all the legal frames and the rules and regulations of functioning of a courthouse. So together we form the management, the chief judge for the content and the quality of the content, and the court manager for all supportive anything that is supportive to
basically
to the court proceedings.
Okay, gotcha. So you also shared, that some cases are public. Could you detail which of those cases, can a member of the public attend?
All criminal cases are public. So, and that usually on St. Martin is this on Wednesdays or Thursdays.
Okay.
Unless it's a minor involved, that it's a minor that is being presented before the court. So those are all public. And as I gave an example, family cases or all closed doors. Basically, that's
those very intimate.
The bigger lines. And then individual cases, because there are so many kinds of court cases. It's just too numerous to mention. That would have in the law specifies if it could be public or if it's closed session.
Okay, understood. So something else that actually clarified that for me earlier, so no problem. One thing that comes to mind is the expansion of the court. Are there any plans for that? And I ask that considering, that there are times where there may be more than one hearing taking place, and then I do know that sometimes I forget the name of the PMA.
Yeah.
PMIA Hall in Backstreet, that sometimes they do cases there.
Yeah.
So is there any consideration? I know it's, of course, a monument and whatnot. But
Yeah. Well, wow, that's one of my, been busy with that for the last years. As you know, we had, besides the fact that the amount of court cases that are being presented to us for judgment, the amount of requests for court cases has grown tremendously.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it will continue to grow. We have seen, for instance, a lot of labor proceedings growing, and you can just imagine why that is.
Yeah, naturally,
okay? Yeah. And so we have to service that, and we don't want we cannot afford too long of a waiting time. So they have to be planned in. And as you said, at this point in time, if you look at the courthouse building, the main building, we have only 2 courtrooms there. And that's not sufficient for the amount of proceedings that we have. And then we have the annex building, which is the old Parliament building. Yeah, that's also a part of the courthouse. We call it the annex building. And in that building, we have the proceedings pertaining to when the hearing of trying to find a word.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry.
Anyway, so we have hearings also there, but again, due to the COVID situation, the room is too small, so we cannot have all the proceedings taking place there.
Gotcha.
So and the building has been damaged by the hurricane, as also our main building, but we fixed the main building for as far as we could from the outside. And then we have that there is not enough space for courtrooms. The PMIA hall has been empty for a while, and even so, the organization has just once in a while they would have activities, and so yes, the specific events, and so we approach them. Would we be able to make use of the PMIA hall for court proceedings? That was really out of need, and we were able to come to a common agreement for that would help for both sides. That the PMIA hall would be fixed and with the rental funds that they would receive, and we have an additional courtroom.
And luckily there's parking right next to the hall too.
And it is a walking distance. Yeah. It's very easy for, you come to the courthouse main building, and then you hear which one of the buildings you need to go to, and it's all in walking distance. We need to expand in space-wise, but with everything, it costs money, of course, and we need funds for that. And while we are not part of government, as I indicated previously, the government is responsible for the housing of the court. And so there is where the challenge lies, as into The facility of, let's say, the property of the annex is there, but the funds to construct a building for the court, that those funds are
That would be
not there
based on government allocation.
as yet. Yes,
Gotcha,
correct.
Gotcha.
So that being said, is also like the courthouse. A courthouse has to adhere to certain rules and regulations, or minimum safety and security requirements. And if we look in a region, but also within our kingdom, we're striving to reach to that level, because our courthouse housing situation does not adhere to those requirements as yet, in the sense of safety and security measures.
Because of the accessibility.
Accessibility and things like that. And so one of the things that we're doing when we did the renovation after the hurricane, we did first also the outside and we painted and all those kind of things. But we're going to go in January, February, we're going to start with in the inside, doing some other renovations that would help the safety and security measures. For instance, that we have now a courtroom that's in the back somewhere. While you would have to go in front by the reception, you have to walk around and go to the back to go to the courtroom. That courtroom is going to be put in the front where the administration is, and the administration is going to go in the back. Anyway, so there's going to be,
Yeah.
So we're busy with a lot of things. So just now, beginning of the year, when you see again all kind of renovation taking place, is also to enhance the safety and security for both the public but also the staff of the courthouse, and to make sure that we adhere to things. So we need expansion. We need a new building.
I can imagine, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you and others definitely need a building, so again, it goes back to money.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, just two questions for you. One of them being something that someone pointed out to me, which I didn't know, although it is noticeable. What I'm referring to is the fact that there's a notice board outside of the court. So, what is that used for exactly?
That's from the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
So, you mean the big board on the side?
Yeah.
The side of the Parliament building?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. It is stipulated by law that if there are criminal case against persons, that the persons have to be served by the prosecutor's office for them to come to court. Some people don't have address, or they cannot be found to be served. And so then you have a public notice board, and by law it stipulates that that board has to be by the court. And it used to be inside when you go up the stairs before you enter the main courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that just did not make sense to me. And because if you don't get into the building or don't need to be at the court proceedings, you would not go up the stairs and stand at the door or look at that publication. And so therefore, with the renovations, one of the things that I did is make sure that it's put outside, that people can pass and see that indeed they're looking for certain persons, publications to come to the court. So those are notifications that has to be served to people that don't have an address, or the address is incorrect and they cannot be served. But it's a publication from the prosecutor's office, not the court. Okay. But the laws stipulate that it must be done at the courthouse.
Okay, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So my final question for you is relating to the news, of the former court manager, as far as that situation. And my question is, how has that affected the court, and what has taken place to whether prevent another occurrence, but also I would say tackle the reputational damage that it caused.
Yes. In any work situation, it is quite unfortunate for a team, especially when I explained to you that the courthouse is a very small, the staffing is a very small unit, and so there are people that know each other for a long time. It's a courthouse family setting. More than maybe in other business settings, you need to be able to trust each other, trust each other's integrity, and work ethics and things like that, because you have access to a lot of information and knowledge that the general public don't have, and we have to adhere to keeping all the things amongst us confidential, and things like that. So also with dealing with the funds that comes into the and it's been placed at the courthouse in our care to ensure that that the legal system is carried out correctly. And so it is really, really unfortunate that a situation like that transpired, that a person in a certain position, we can say now, abused that position, and it happened as it happened. What did we do in the meantime as a courthouse to ensure that doesn't happen anymore? We reviewed all the processing procedures in the sense of putting in place again checks and balances that sometimes you take for granted, because just as in the laws are there, but they have to be implemented. The same thing with rules, with processing procedures. They can be there, but you understand, and then you get so accustomed to, okay, nobody gonna do anything, so let's just move on. But that you really implement that the checks and balances are being executed. That we have done again, to make sure that it's not just something on paper, but that it's executed in such a way to not only to make sure that that because of the distrust amongst each other, but to make sure that you also protect each other, because sometimes we underestimate that element. You don't only look at things from a negative part, but you look at it for the positive part, in the sense of, as colleagues, you need to be to protect each other from getting into the challenge of abusing your position. So that's put in place.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Any final words?
No, actually not. Well, let me say so. I think it's very important that you're giving this platform for not only the courthouse but organizations on St. Maarten, so that we can the general public knows of the entities that are there and what they actually do. And because a lot of times everybody goes through the front street and comes at the courthouse, especially now that's decorated so nicely, and takes pictures, but don't know what happens at the courthouse unless you have a court proceedings there. So thank you for the opportunity of explaining about the courthouse. And if there are any further questions, you know where to reach me.
Great, no problem.
Yes?
Yeah, and thank you for coming as well. So to our viewers and listeners, that was Richelda Emmanuel, court manager of the courthouse. And I do hope that this was definitely an informational conversation, and do take care until tomorrow. See you. Great.
Amalia.